We have Culin Tate with us today, and we're going to cover everything and anything to do with short-term rentals. So this is your episode if this is something you're interested in. So Culin, I really appreciate your time, and you can find all of Cullin's information, including his coaching, at Host Coach. Make sure you use that CO now, hostcoach.co. So thanks for joining me here today, Culin.
Yeah, Jack, thank you for having me.
So, I have to obviously start with, how did you possibly get into the niche of this? Because frankly, every time I run into or try to do this myself, I haven't had a ton of success, to be frank. So you must either really enjoy doing this or you've found the winning formula.
It is a passion, Jack. I did, as a lot of real estate investors, found my way into it by happenstance. I have always been a serial tech entrepreneur. And in 2018, I sold a company and started scratching my head. What am I going to do next? How am I going to come up with the next great opportunity? I had an Airbnb cabin at the time, and it was doing what I would say fairly very well, and decided, well, maybe I'll lean into that and make an investment in 2 or 3 other Airbnb properties.
So, one of the things that I have a hard time finding is like, well, let's start where do you determine, or how do you determine the best place for an Airbnb?
Question. A lot of people try to solve that from a really analytical perspective, meaning let's go find a list of where the best Airbnb investment towns and cities are. I look at it from a different way. I look at it from finding what I call finding your where, meaning, where do you like to go? Where would you like to go away with your spouse or your girlfriend or your family? Where would you like to go within 2-3 hours driving distance from every major metropolitan area? There are these getaway locations.
Sure. No, that makes a lot of sense. Is that partly because then it motivates you to go check on it and maybe actually stay there yourself? Or
I think that an Airbnb investments should be pleasurable. It should be something that you're passionate about, and that passion will come through in the product that you're delivering and the experience that you're delivering for your guests.
Sure. So, a lot of people, like in my area, going 3 hours away, I guess that would probably work. Where it doesn't seem to work for me anyway, is that we tried to run these numbers in. I'm near Fargo, North Dakota, and that's not exactly a destination for any kind of retreat.
I would imagine Fargo is a pretty good sized city, so you don't necessarily need someone to fly from New York City to Fargo to have a good, profitable Airbnb. So I don't know the exact population of Fargo, but it's a city I've heard of, so I imagine there's 1 million people or more. And that's really all you need, is those people wanting to get away for the weekend, be it a birthday or anniversary. Or post-COVID, we're seeing a lot of what we call bleisure activity, the blending of business and leisure, where people are wanting to get out of their apartment, wanting to get out of their condo, wanting to get out of their house, and go work somewhere else where they can be in nature and take a hike and enjoy the scenery.
Sure. So you have a book, and I'm going to put a link to your book as well in the show notes, but you mentioned the 4 pillars of short-term rental success. Could we cover some of those?
Let's do that first, which is finding your where. So find a place that is close enough that you can get to, particularly for your first. This can be done remotely. I've done it remotely, but finding a place that you're passionate about, few hours driving distance from your home, primary residence, primary location. And that really is the first part. Find that where, and then once you have that in mind, then there's some analytical tools that we can use to dive in to gauge that market, to really uncover what the average daily rates and occupancies and how effective that market's going to be as an Airbnb market for you as a host.
Sure. So, some of the things too is what usually makes my numbers fall apart is the turnover. How have you found ways in which to turn these units and manage that process?
You mean the physical cleaning and maintenance
right.
of the turn? That is a key business relationship in short-term rentals, is how do you find a trusted housekeeper who is really your partner in the business? I have found, just using the old bandit yard signs, particularly if you're in a location that has other Airbnbs or other short-term rentals. Print up these really nice signs and I put them in the entrance to the neighborhoods. Housekeeper wanted. And you can interview a few and find the person that fits with you, and then really treat that person extremely well. They're really your valued business partner, not just somebody to run a vacuum cleaner, but someone who's looking out for your property and cares about it as much as you do.
Sure. Are there any amenities that you offer that make you stand out?
That is really part of the finding your where, sort of what we would call macro amenities. So I am primarily invested myself in cabins. So we're always looking for a view or a nice deck or a hot tub, things like that. You can't build a view, but you can add a hot tub. You can make them pet friendly. You can install proper flooring so that people can bring, their furry friends along for the weekend.
No, that makes a lot of sense. So, one of the things that I think people struggle with is, if they're especially new to short-term rentals, how to stand out from that crowd. It seems like it's gotten a little overwhelmed with a lot of expertise, if you will, or people that have been doing it for a long time. And it's hard to get started. Are there any low-hanging fruit tactics that people can use?
Absolutely. That's really kind of a segue to the second pillar that you mentioned, which is we call make it pop. So first, pick a good property, pick a good house that's got some curb appeal. If it needs a coat of paint outside, give it the coat of paint outside. In the cabin market, we're really looking for something cabin on the outside and crate and barrel on the inside. You'd be surprised if you look through Airbnb listings, how dark and dismal, we call it dead animals and doilies, grandma's, quilts on the backs of chairs. So you really want a crisp, clean interior. We find about 80% of people who initiate bookings with us are female. So, maybe they go to a spouse or other partner when they make the booking, but initiating the booking. So we really want a crisp, clean interior. And then we absolutely positively want professional HDR photography. And you'd be, again, so surprised how many hosts don't make that step. And it is critical to standing out, as you said, on Airbnb or any other OTAs.
Yeah, especially when you know that it's especially when it takes these small strategies are what can really make you stand out. And a lot of people, I even see it for rental properties, just standard rental properties. How many people just take photos with their phone and call it good? I see
it with, $300,000 new home listings where the photos have been taken and they're really dark and boring, right? So we can do some things on the interior. You're talking about little touches, little splashes of color, like to do accent walls, provide nice coffee stations. There's really a lot of things. One of the things about short-term rentals that I find very entrepreneurial is that you have a lot of control over the product. And even if you start day one, you can listen to your guests and you can iterate. You can make really impactful changes by making small changes in your decor, in your amenities. We mentioned hot tubs and pet friendly. You may start without a hot tub and add a hot tub later, or add a pet-friendly amenity to the listing. So you have a lot of control over that product as well as the pricing.
Yeah, it sounds like you're really keeping your guest in mind. What kind of feedback loop do you get from them in order to make these type of improvements? Is it just through the Airbnb app?
Primarily through the platform. We have an automated message that goes out to our guests about 12 hours after check-in, which is usually around 11 o'clock the next morning. And we would just ask them how it's going. How are you doing? Is there anything we can be doing better for you? And sometimes they'll say, I've got a question about the TV. Or often they'll ask for a recommendation. Where should I take a hike? It's a beautiful day. Or where do I find this in the house? So that gives us an opportunity to interface with the guest and head off any potential concerns that they might have. And then once they do check out and write a review, we spend time reviewing those reviews to find that's really a lot of how we drive our maintenance and improvement. The bed was squeaky or the door didn't, the door stuck. You get a lot of feedback. We turn over about 12 times a month in each property. So that's a lot of points to receive from guests for areas to improve.
Yeah. And I can imagine that takes a lot of management to make sure that you're getting things done. Like Airbnbs, do you manage right now?
I own and operate outright 8 units. 8?
Cabins.
2 bedrooms, 3 bedrooms, and 4 bedroom cabins.
Are they all centralized, or in essentially the same place, or do you have to? Are they managed?
They are essentially in the same county. One's a little bit on the outskirts of the county, but I coach. I have coaching clients all over the country that are in all sorts of different types of properties, be it oceanfront, beachside, cabins, lake houses, winery areas, things like that.
So, your support staff, are they more central? Like, are your cleaning individuals, are they able to handle most of these for you across your footprint, or do you have different people at each property?
I have 3 primary housekeepers. So, I find it a little difficult. One housekeeper can only turn over so many houses, right? Mm-hmm. So I have multiple housekeepers that have their own properties, and they become associated with that property. I don't rotate between them. Some people talk about trying to rotate their cleaners or use other services that rotate cleaners. I really believe in creating a relationship with that housekeeper, and that housekeeper has a relationship and a pride in the property. In addition to housekeepers, you always need a good handyman to fix a leaky faucet, someone that you can call to go out and do something that may be above what the housekeeper can handle.
Do you enable the housekeeper to make those calls for the plumber, or do you handle all that?
That's a great question. I do have one housekeeper who has some in-house handy services. Some of her employees can do things like replace a water faucet or something. She did some ceiling fans for me recently. So that's actually a plus if you can't find a housekeeper that does have some relationships like that. She always runs it past me first, but it's great to have her handle the management of a repair like that.
Sure. Okay. So just to remind everybody, head over to hostcoach.co for a lot more information, including links to the podcast that Culin hosts. So with all of this now, you've acquired 8 properties. How have you been finding regarding funding these properties and the acquisition aspect?
I'm lucky enough to have been doing it long enough where I'm basically burring the properties, buying them, getting them fixed up, getting them renovated, getting them on the market and generating cash flow. I generally will go in and buy in cash and then refinance out that cash after 6 months. There's a lot taking place in the lending space around short-term rentals where we're getting lenders that are treating short-term rentals a little bit more like multifamilies, where we're getting some asset lending, so it's not just all credit score dependent. We're finding lenders that are able to lend based on cash flows.
Sure. And then, going back to the management of this and you having the software background, what kind of systems and tools are you using with your boots on the ground to keep this all managed and under control?
Really, once you're up and running in terms of operational, the biggest tools that any host should have would be one, a dynamic pricing software, something like Price Labs or Wheelhouse, that is continually taking data from your OTA, your Airbnb or VRBO, and analyzing the exact supply and demand for every upcoming day and adjusting your prices for you. One mistake that a lot of hosts I see make is that they overprice their weekdays and underprice their weekends. If you just have a flat $200 a night, $250 a night, they'll end up with a lot of vacancy during the week because next Tuesday, somebody may not want to spend $250 a night. But next month, when it's your anniversary or your wife's birthday or something special, graduation, that same property could be $500 a night. So first and foremost, a dynamic pricing tool, and probably about 90% of hosts are not using one of those tools, and they're very affordable, very powerful. And then the other tool in terms of operations would be a automated messaging tool. There's lots of these. Hospitable and a lot of the channel managers will automate your booking, reservation messages, your follow-up messages that really bring down the workload for the host.
Sure. Okay. Well, a couple other questions that come to mind then is that you talk about the BRRRR aspect of this. What type of, in your acquiring cabins, what are some of the things that you found that you have to, what are the improvements that you're making to these homes?
It varies widely. I've had a few properties that were, mostly turnkey, just coming with some newer furniture, all the way down to I've dug a 700-foot well and paved a 700-foot road at a cabin. So that I think that's something really to take into consideration as an investor when you're looking at a property. What is your tolerance for time, money, headache? For the first time investor, you may not want to take on a property that's going to need $50,000 worth of rehab. There are a lot of properties out there that have been used as family vacation rentals that are family getaway type residences that are in really good shape. But things like just paint, carpet, flooring, sometimes appliance updates are the big ones.
And then you were talking about the rates, like during the week and the weekends. I have heard of people using the strategy of kind of being aggressive with their price, especially right off the bat, in order to draw those initial visitors and initial reviews. Is that a strategy you would suggest?
Absolutely. Airbnb and the other OTAs, online travel agent platforms, are at their heart a search engine, much like Google. And so when you understand what that search algorithm is looking for, you can, act accordingly. So what are they looking? They're looking for a click-through rate, right? So if you've got those beautiful pictures and beautiful amenities, your listing is going to get clicked on. It's looking for the user to stay engaged on that listing and stay there. So reading beautiful descriptions and reading picture captions, and then closing the sale, booking that opportunity. So it's definitely a good idea, particularly early on, to make sure that you're staying, that you're closing those leads that the platform is giving you, and that you're staying fully occupied. And so if you need to do that through some price reduction in the early days, then that's definitely advisable.
So, I'm hoping that we can now change course just a little bit. And let's say somebody has found that property that they can they believe would be a good Airbnb, and they do the acquisition. What could they expect for that during that first 30 days or so? What are they going to experience?
There is a learning curve to the craft. A lot of first-time hosts, probably the biggest advice that I can give first-time hosts, particularly during that 30-day period, is to make sure that you're really looking at this like a business, not to take it too emotionally. I've definitely had mentees and some family members that get a little upset. If you put all this time and energy into a property and someone has a complaint, it's very easy to react to that emotionally. Hopefully you're not reacting to the guest directly, but just to put on a little bit of a thick skin, to put on your business hat and know that you're providing a service and that you're going to do your best, and you're going to learn from feedback from your guests. So take the feedback that you're getting from your guests and absorb it as something to learn, as opposed to something to respond to.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And I think we kind of blipped out here for just a second. Culin froze.
I'm here.
Oh, there you are. You're back. So no, that makes a lot of sense, especially taking on that feedback that you're getting from your customers, and especially if there's anything actionable. I can imagine if you're acquiring properties that you might be in your family or spending some time in, it does get a little emotional, because that's kind of maybe a favorite place of yours and your family's.
That's another thing to do as a host, is to spend time maybe before that first 30 days, before going live. I always recommend spend a week, spend a weekend, spend 3 or 4 days in your property, and you're going to hear that creaky roof, or that dripping faucet, or, spend some time and live there yourself. Make use of your own amenities, make use of your own, coffee makers and appliances, and spend a little time there, enjoy it, and also learn from, what things actually living here, somebody spending 3 or 4 nights in the property is going to experience, and try to head off those objections.
So, it's no secret, especially in your domain name. I mean, your host coach. If somebody is looking to get into this, talk a little bit about the importance of finding some mentorship and what type of questions they should ask the mentor to make sure it's a right fit.
I think I would want to make sure that the mentor is actually an investor and owner themselves. I definitely have come across some gurus or experts that don't necessarily own or operate a lot of their own property. So I really want to make sure, if I was looking for a mentor, that this person has multiple properties that they own and operate. Maybe go and look at their reviews as a host. ask them about their pricing strategies. I think there's probably a good place to start.
Yeah, no, that's some great tips. This has been a great conversation, and I'm sure we could unpack quite a bit more associated with this. And I know I wanted to point out again, you do have a book. I think it's available. Is it available on Amazon? I'm pretty sure it is.
Came out about 2 weeks ago on Amazon. We're getting great reviews. We're excited about it. It's always a proposition, a scary proposition when you first publish something, but there's a lot of experience in there, and not just my own. The neat thing about being a coach is that I get to talk to and gain experience in situations from hundreds of other hosts. And then, sort of like the butterfly pollinator effect, I can share those experiences with new hosts to help them really accelerate the learning. Airbnb and the short-term rental, there's not one piece of it that's really hard, but it's kind of a windy road that can seem daunting. And it's nice to have someone, shine that flashlight and show them a clear path to success.
Well, can you maybe share one of the stories associated with one of your students, like turning something around? Or
I'll see if I paraphrase this story. And this is about a listing that was around for a while and performed very well, and then started not to perform. And it was for reasons around the management of the property. We weren't able to adjust price to make a change. So the listing wasn't getting bookings, and the listing, it was found, was showing very low in search results. And then that was further constrained by not being able to adjust pricing. And so we were able to go in and just basically re-optimize and retouch every piece of the listings, policies, descriptions, photos, and basically give it a refresh without changing prices, and drove it back to the top of search results and back to profitability again.
Wow, that's really something telling. Like what you just told about earlier in this episode, you were mentioning that make sure you have some good photos and everything to help make it pop. It can really drive those results. You really didn't change much to the actual rental property itself, but refresh the listing, if you will.
Exactly. So refreshing, just go back in, if you have, so that's a piece of advice for people who are listening. Maybe you've got an Airbnb listing and you're thinking it used to do well and it's sort of not making as much money as it once did. The first thing to do is check where is it falling in the search results. I talked about Google. I believe that if you're not on the first page, it's going to be hard to win, right? How often do you go past page 2, when you're looking for something, on a web search? And it's very similar. I think Airbnb statistic is something like the average user clicks 16 to 18 pages. And that really translates down to maybe really only looking at 3 or 4 listings. So if you're not able to drive your listing to that sort of first page, you should really be looking at what's underlying that. And so going back into your listing and just maybe you need to relax some policies. Maybe your cancellation policy is a little too strict, or maybe you don't have instant booking enabled, or it's enabled in too strict of a fashion. So it's not always about price. It's often not about price to win, to get your listing to the top. It's often about just re-looking at those settings, maybe experiment with those photos, reorder those photos, rewrite that description. As I said, this is one of the most rewarding parts of the short-term rental, is that how much control we have over the product. That we can go in and we can change things, and not just from a pricing perspective or long-term marketing perspective. We can make changes in the listing and see immediate results.
Sure. No, this has been a great conversation. I really appreciate your time, Culin. I warned you it was coming. Is there any other topic or question you wish I would have asked you here today?
Well, the one I was thinking about was, maybe I'll just sort of summarize, which is, I talked about the 4 pillars of success being: find your where that matters to you, make it pop, make the decor and the photos stand out, optimize, for price for occupancy, make sure that you're not under, pricing your weekends, make sure that you're filling up your weekdays. It's definitely possible to stay, 90% occupied. And then make sure that your listing is ranking well within your platform. And if it's not, take some steps to re-optimize it.
Sure. Again, it is hostcoach.co. I really appreciate your time here today, Culin. I hope you'll consider coming back again sometime.
Absolutely, Jack. I'd love to.